Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the mind of legendary music producer Rick Rubin, breaking down his absolutely profound insights on how to consistently produce meaningful work. Yeah, you know that feeling when you're just staring at a blank page or a blinking cursor, completely wondering where all your ideas went? Yeah, we've all been there. So, we're going to look at how to intentionally tune our creative dials. Because making work that stands the test of time, it isn't just some happy accident. It's actually a super reliable process.
Think about it. Trying to force a creative state usually feels exactly like turning a clunky, old-school radio dial. Honestly, most of the time, you're just getting absolute static. You're sitting around waiting for some random bolt of inspiration to strike, and it's incredibly frustrating, right? But the real solution is learning how to completely skip that static and land directly on the music. There are actually specific states of mind that consistently lead to creative output. Understanding them is literally like programming your favorite go-to stations into that radio.
So let's jump right into this framework. We've got 4 preset stations, forming the acronym ECIN, that you can program into your mind to practically guarantee creative output. The experimental state, the clean slate state, the inspired state, and the novel approach state.
All right, station number 1, the experimental state, which is all about boundless curiosity.
When you just let your inner child play without intervening, and you start asking those wild what-if questions, some truly amazing things happen. Just look at Tom Morello, the lead guitarist for Rage Against the Machine. He literally looked out his window one day and asked, "Hey, what if I could replicate the sounds out there on my electric guitar?" By trying to mimic the noise of helicopters and police sirens, he didn't just make weird noises. He discovered completely new guitar techniques and basically invented his own signature sound. Or think about how asking the exact right experimental question can completely reinvent a classic. Jerome Robbins asked a structural what-if about setting Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet in 1950s New York, completely centering it around 2 teenage street gangs of different ethnic backgrounds. That one simple question directly birthed West Side Story, literally one of the greatest Broadway shows in history. Here's the truly crucial, kind of paradoxical point. Applying extreme constraints actually forces totally new creative avenues to open up for us. I mean, think about giving an AI chatbot a creative constraint, right? Like telling it to rewrite a paragraph in fewer than 40 words. You get way more interesting results. The author George Perec went so far as to write an entire book without using the single most common letter in the French alphabet, the letter E, and it became this massive, celebrated work of modern literature. Or the painter Yves Klein. He limited his entire palette to just one single color. And in doing so, he literally invented a shade of blue no one had ever seen before. Absolutely wild.
Historically speaking, just staying open to the unexpected outcomes during these what-if experiments has handed us some world-changing innovations. Ancient Chinese alchemists were trying to find an elixir for immortality, and oops, they accidentally invented gunpowder. Over the last century alone, lab chemists unexpectedly stumbled into inventing penicillin, plastic, and even Post-it notes. As Rick Rubin points out, you really have to wonder, how many massive innovations have we lost simply because someone was so relentlessly focused on their original goal that they totally missed the revelation right in front of them?
Moving right along, we hit our second station, the clean slate state, which focuses on overcoming blindness.
We all know what happens when you stare at a single project for weeks on end. You completely lose the ability to see how to make it better. It's project blindness. So the goal here is to step away from the story we tell ourselves about how things should be, and instead try experiencing them for the very first time. The real beauty of this state is that the moment you drop your preconceived notions, you cultivate this profound sense of awe. You're opening yourself back up to fresh, completely unpolluted perspectives.
And honestly, the best part? You don't have to abandon your work and retreat to the mountains for a week to achieve this clean slate. You simply need to practice noticing the overlooked details in your daily routine. Next time you walk through your neighborhood, actively look at the architecture of a house you pass every single day. Or stop and actually examine the different leaves on a tree. When you put on a familiar song, pretend you're hearing it for the absolute first time. Try to catch those subtle background lyrics or instrumentals you've always missed. This simple daily practice is what cleans the mental slate for your real work.
That brings us perfectly to our third preset station, the inspired state, and finding your unique filter.
Okay, I know imitation sounds like a massive dirty word in any creative field, but we really need to reframe it because imitation is actually a highly creative act. See, when you imitate something, you're naturally passing it through your own unique filter of life experiences, and that transforms it into work that literally only you could make. Rick Rubin notes that the Beatles were heavily inspired by and openly tried to imitate American rock and roll artists like Chuck Berry and the Shirelles, but it sounded totally different because, well, the Beatles were different. Even Malcolm Gladwell intentionally imitated Michael Lewis's character development techniques to level up his own writing. Yet, the final product? It still sounds unmistakably like Malcolm Gladwell.
Believe it or not, there's actually a bit of a mathematical formula to inspiration. The further away your inspirations are from your actual field, the more original your final creation is guaranteed to be. For example, a classical musician finding inspiration strictly from another classical musician, they might just end up with something derivative. But take that same classical musician and use a heavy metal band as their launchpad, now we're talking. They are almost certainly going to produce something incredibly original.
Finally, we arrive at our fourth preset, the novel approach state, which is all about breaking the block.
Consider this your emergency station. It's designed specifically for those agonizing moments when you are stubbornly stuck and just trying harder isn't doing a thing. If you're blocked, do not just keep beating your head against the wall. That almost never works. Instead, think like a fisherman who isn't catching anything. You got to change your bait or just move your boat to a completely different part of the lake. And we can do this by using 3 specific switch-ups to effortlessly trigger a creative breakthrough.
The first tactic? Lower the stakes. Just take the immense pressure off by intentionally making your work smaller and way less significant. Rubin frequently tells stuck songwriters to just leave the studio and come back tomorrow with only one single new line. That's it, one line. Or say you're struggling with a business idea. Sit down and force yourself to generate 10 undeniably terrible, deeply flawed business ideas. By aggressively lowering the stakes, you quickly build idea momentum, and that effortlessly transitions you right back into producing the good stuff.
The second switch-up requires you to aggressively change your physical environment to spark new insights. Go work in a chaotic, noisy coffee shop, or conversely, find a completely silent room. Andy Warhol famously painted some of his absolute best work while a television, a radio, and a record player were all blasting simultaneously just to create a sensory overload. Rick Rubin himself often finds that simply walking over and turning off all the studio lights while a band is playing leads straight to a massive creative breakthrough. The secret to the final switch-up is vividly injecting completely new imagery into your mind. Imagine someone you deeply love, or picture a scene from a favorite film while you're working. Rubin once directed a struggling keyboardist to visualize a beautiful, smoke-covered green hill where a massive battle had just ended, with wounded soldiers scattered everywhere, waiting for help. He told the musician, "Play your solo exactly like that." And guess what? The music that poured out was breathtakingly beautiful and entirely unique. By routinely cycling through these 4 states, experimental, clean slate, inspired, and novel approach, you drastically increase your chances of making work that actually stands out and survives the test of time. And Rubin beautifully reminds us why this matters so much in the first place. You know, as humans, we come and go pretty quickly, but we get the privilege to make works that stand as monuments to our time here. Whether it's Michelangelo's David, ancient cave paintings, or even just a child's messy finger painting, they all echo the exact same human cry. It's like graffiti scrawled in a bathroom stall saying, "I was here." No matter what your specific craft, hobby, or profession is, you have the profound ability to leave your mark and say, "I was here." So the only real question left is, which of these 4 preset stations are you going to tune into today? And more importantly, once you finally skip all that static, what kind of music are you going to unleash on the world?